Good morning, 8th graders. So this is your air masses, wind and pressure belt doodle notes, just kind of how to. This is probably the most pages you'll have to do, and by most I mean 3. Not a huge deal. So let's remember some of the expectations. So first, when we're doing our doodle notes, we need to interact with our vocab. 2, we need to answer questions. And 3, we need to color important information. Okay, things that help you remember what's going on. So I'm going to go through this first page a little bit more intensely than I am going to with the second and third pages. Okay, so first things first, we are talking about our vocab. So the only major vocab on this page is simply air masses. So anything here, air masses. Now, granted, we could almost as like a sub vocab sort of thing. We do have continental air masses. We do have maritime air masses. Okay. Those are things that we need to know. Yes, air masses is the overall vocabulary term, but we need to understand these ones as well. Okay, so that's it for this. Now to kind of break apart their definitions. So air masses are air masses form when air spends days to weeks over the same part of the earth. Huge volumes of air with specific characteristics, temperature, humidity, pressure. Okay, so air masses form over the same part of the earth. Okay, because yes, it's important to know that it takes days to weeks, but not as important as just understanding that air masses as a whole are just air masses that form over one area. Okay, huge volumes of air with specific characteristics. I think huge volume is really important to understand, and then specific characteristics. Okay, so that's about it for vocabulary on this page. Now we need to answer questions. So we see that there's blank spaces here. That's going to tell us that we need to answer some questions, and what it is this. So doodle and describe the 2 types of air masses and 3 source regions. Okay, and then we need to answer the 6 combinations. Okay, so let's go through this. Continental air masses. Well, continental we know is the formation over land. So forms over land. Okay. Typically, when something is forming over land, it's going to be far less moist, so less moisture. So less moisture. Okay, things like that. So you could say less moisture or dry air. Okay. So however you want to doodle that. So maybe I think of any air masses that form, and I'm going to like use like that, and then over the plains. This is wheat, by the way. Wheat. So, that. And then I'm just going to put in there dry. Okay. That's just how maybe I would doodle it. How you doodle it might be different. Who knows? Maritime air masses. So maritime, remember, is meaning forms over water. So I'm going to start with forms over water. Okay, this is going to have lots of moisture. Okay, so you could almost call it like humid. So that, and maybe if I want to draw waves, if my waves cannot look like weird little flagella, I don't know how this was so good and then these just looked ridiculous. But this, and then I know people hate this word. It doesn't bother me. Okay? But it's moist air over water. Okay? Now, the last three are our regions. So, capital A is for Arctic. P is for polar. And T is for tropical. Okay? So, that, so however you want to doodle that, remember your Arctic is going to be way up from the Arctic Circle. This is going to be like our, I hate that they use the term polar vortex, but yeah, it's our polar vortex, nonsensical sort of like cold air. Okay, polar is just northern or super southern cold air, and tropical is that warmer equator air. So the 6 combinations. This is where we talk about continental versus maritime, and then these 3. So it would start with a lowercase c. So if we're doing continental Arctic, continental polar, and continental tropical. And then same thing goes with maritime Arctic, maritime polar, and maritime tropical. Okay, so I need you to go through and kind of figure out a way to describe and doodle. Granted, they did a little doodling for you in tropical, but how would you do polar versus how would you do Arctic? And then give a little description for it. Okay? Now, the last part is to color important information. Okay? Again, that is going to kind of sort of be like dependent on you. What do you deem as necessary and important? So, obviously, if they provide you with this, you're going to color this. So here's my little island. And then I'm going to, I don't like that color. Then I'm going to color my coconut tree. Got a lot darker than I thought it was going to be, but hey. And all this. Okay, but I'm also going to color my own doodles because obviously if I added my doodles, they're going to be important because that's how my brain already connects those dots. So go through here, find a pretty blue. So maybe I just needed to use a marker because none of those look ridiculous. Okay, until I color it in. But hey, you know what? They're mine. So that, and then I'm gonna find a different blue. And then I need something that just says moist air. Okay. And then I'm going to do the same for my dry continental air. I need some wheat colored, because again, this is in the plains. And just because I'm a little extra, I'm gonna go through and add different shades, because not all wheat is the same color. I don't know. This is just what my brain thinks of. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. Okay? That's why I give you options. Now, how do we depict dry? I don't know. Maybe brown? So, dry. And you know what? I like that brown. So I'm going to add it in with my... Because why not? Okay. And this is just how, ooh, that's like a weird greenish brown. Okay, this is what works in my brain. I'm not saying it's going to work for everyone. So that. Now, after I do this, let me just kind of point out some of the things you're going to have to answer on the next 2 pages. So your 5 types of air masses, we already kind of talked about those with this. So your symbol is going to be these, okay? Your characteristics, well, what do those ones look like from the first one? And then your geosources. So that's just like generally, and let's only think in the US, okay? Because that's what we're focusing in on. But this. Now I want to point one thing out quick so you don't miss it, okay? And that is there are technically 2 spaces here. Okay, so this one is made out of 2. So you have this super duper northern one and then just slightly northern right below it. Okay, I will give you, let's do a fun color for this one because I can. This is going to be your continental Arctic. Okay. So this is your continental Arctic. This one is going to be your continental polar. So make sure you get those. I don't know why they've depicted it like that. Everything else is only 1, but this one is 2. Okay, so you need to finish this and then diagram this. Finally, last page. So you have 2 4-ish vocab terms. You need to label the Earth's rotation using red. You need to make sure that you are using 2 different colors for without the Coriolis effect and with the Coriolis effect. And then you need to answer this. So fill in the space with a word splash about ocean currents. Use color and doodles and fonts and things like that. So what do you know? What questions do you have? Okay, about ocean currents. Now they talk about deep currents and surface currents. So make sure you are looking at those. Okay, awesome. So you have 1, 2, 3 questions you have to answer on that page. You have 3 columns on this page plus then diagramming, and then you have the 3 regions. Okay, if you have any questions, please reach out to your teachers. We are here to help. And if not, happy doodling. Thank you.